Hi, and welcome to Curious Conversations, the podcast where curiosity meets connection. Thanks for joining as we discuss captivating stories and ideas and engage in thought-provoking conversations with experts, enthusiasts, and everyday people. We hope to ignite a curious spirit as we embark on a quest for understanding, one curious conversation at a time. So let's jump in this together. Welcome to the world of Curious Conversations. Hello, and welcome to Curious Conversations. We are your hosts, Carly and Mandy, and this week we are talking about roadside attractions. Some you've probably heard of, and some you probably haven't. Mandy, this episode was your brainchild, and it has been so much fun.
Oh my gosh, I'm really excited about the subject for this week's Curious Conversation. Listen, since I was a child, I've always been drawn to roadside attractions. I mean, whether that's some weird freestanding figure for a photo op, or like a crazy looking diner, or maybe even a museum, something like that. It was always exciting to just glance out the window on one of those otherwise boring road trips growing up and see something peculiar. As you know, there's less of them these days, and that makes me really sad. But we're going to talk about what's still standing and even a bit about the nostalgia of those old ones that we got a chance to visit.
That is awesome. Well, listen, before we dive in, we want to share with you this week's Curious Dish, the part of our show where we dish about the most curious thing we've seen this week. So, Mandy, what you got for us?
Okay, so here's something I thought was a little out there. Maybe you guys don't, but I overheard, this is not something I saw, but I overheard someone in a store telling another someone about a little thing called goat yoga. Have you heard of this?
Never.
Okay, so I'm standing there in line, and I'm wanting to turn around and say, I'm sorry, what? But, I continue to just sort of eavesdrop instead, and I must have missed the intro, but the whole thing had me curious, and of course, I looked it up. So it seems like that you and I have been missing out on some kind of fun on the farm. I know you've mentioned that you like little goats, and I do too. So here's what I found out. So there's this whole thing where you can literally go to a quote unquote yoga farm, and the goats are supposed to interact with you with yoga poses.
What?
No joke.
Okay.
So I guess that you pay for this kind of thing, and then you can share it with your friends. I think, Carly, there's a ton of stuff going on right now that wouldn't even be happening unless we could share. Yeah. It's like that share factor, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So it's just put that on your page. Here's me at Goat Yoga, because that's real normal.
Okay, well, listen, I can't top that story, but I can match it with another goat story.
Okay.
All right, so I have several reasons that I like to travel to Alabama periodically. Just some places I like to shop, some restaurants I really enjoy, and then they have a drive-in movie theater. And some of those areas are really kind of out there, they are way in the country. And I enjoy the drive. I really like the sights on the way. But just to see those large expansive farms, and they have the cute houses with those big massive wraparound porches. Okay, so one trip in particular, I saw something that I thought was super curious, and it was a goat, but I'm not talking about one of the cute ones that you see wearing PJs on TikTok. I'm talking a big, giant, kind of ugly one. But this poor guy was walking around with an old pair of bicycle handlebars duct taped to his horns. Yes. Listen, I can only imagine, there were some kids out there who wanted a pony, or, they wanted a dirt bike for Christmas, and they didn't get it, but they made the best of what they had, which was a goat and some duct tape. So it was very entertaining. But I still think I'm going to stick with your goat yoga.
Yeah, I think that sounds nicer. It makes you wonder, so was that some, just kids being mean to the goat? Or like you said, was it just some ingenuity?
It might have been a real sport.
Okay, well, let's jump on into the main part of our stories here. And Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I've been to Panama City like about 50 times.
Oh.
That's no joke. I know that sounds, obnoxious, but my family went every summer, and so I just continued the tradition as an adult. And some years I even went more than once growing up, and that was a long time ago, and that my parents actually talked about moving there, so that was another aspect to that. I just love Panama City. So, I almost grew up down there because, like I said, they had this idea to get like a motel and sort of live in the back and all this kind of thing. So I've got all this nostalgia about Panama City. But anyway, I want to start here with my roadside attractions. So before we do start, I've got to ask you, I know you're from Florida, so how well do you know Panama City?
You know what? Not very well, really. So I was not really much of a beach goer when I lived in Florida. Now I almost cry like every time I go to head back to the mountains. But even, my entire life, I've never really been one to frequent those like tourist spots. I kind of stick with those little hideaway beaches. But I know that PCB seems to be like a favorite spot for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, okay, so way back when there were quite a few roadside attractions there, and that's sort of where my mind goes when someone says roadside attractions. It's very different there now, but when I was a child, we'd just, we'd come into town and you could see like Petticoat Junction on the side of the road, and that was an amusement park that was based on, it's like a Western amusement park at the beach, which is kind of weird.
I like it.
Yeah, so I guess they were adding something different, but anyway, it was a ghost town at that point because all there was this giant roller coaster that was abandoned, like the old wooden kind that would like bump and bang you around and you screamed your head off.
Yes.
So anyway, we'll have to come to that maybe on a future abandoned amusement park episode. I don't know. That sounds fun because I do have a lot also to share about Miracle Strip Amusement Park, which was right down the road from there, and it was in full swing back in the 80s when I was a kid. Do you know Miracle Strip?
Well, the only thing I know about Miracle Strip was that there was a coaster there called the Starliner, and it was the first permanent roller coaster in the state. And when the park shut down in 2004, the Starliner was actually moved to a theme park in Winter Haven, which was called Cypress Gardens. And as I mentioned on our last episode, I actually worked there as a Southern Belle. So yeah, that's pretty cool, little connection.
Yeah, what I understand is when that place did shut down, some of the rides were distributed to other parks. It's actually a personal goal because I'm just that kind of person to visit those parks where the pieces are because, like, I can't tell you how much I am in love with old Panama City. So anyway, going back to all of this because I could talk about these details on and on. That's going to get us a little bit off track, but I thought it was just me being weird and hanging on to these things. But listen, there's like an entire Facebook page devoted to people who love the old Panama City. So when I discovered that years ago, I was like, whoa, it's not just me.
Right.
Anyway, I digress, which is kind of what I do. But anyway, so I want to say that Val Valentine, who has a connection there, is like my hero because he was a creator slash designer of a lot of those roadside attractions I was going to talk about. So he made the rides at Miracle Strip, and I'll talk about that, another time. But he was such a cool guy because he was actually the creator of Casper the Friendly Ghost. That's something you probably know, and Olive Oil, Popeye art, all that kind of stuff. And I found out actually, besides some things down in Panama City, he created the mansion, like the spooky house in Gatlinburg. It's on the back. It's Mysterious Mansion or something like that.
Right.
That was him. Yeah. So after I found that out, I was like, oh, I could see that with his other stuff. But anyway, I'm going to have to share some pictures. We'll have to put those up and give an idea of some of these places I'm talking about. But one of the things I want to focus on, which I just learned more about in the past few years, was a place called Alvin's Island Magic Mountain Mall when I was a kid.
Okay.
There were a lot of Alvin's Islands. There still are, and they're mostly like this quick, grab some sunscreen, get a t-shirt, get the airbrush shirt to take back home.
Right.
I think everybody's had one of those, but this one was different. So it looked like a giant volcano, and as a kid, that's really cool.
Right.
It's like this whole store. But at the top of all that, because it was just kind of like a small mall, and at the top of that was this tunnel with all these, this area you could walk through with all these little hidden windows. You could look down and see like an old pirate skeleton or a pile of gold, stuff like that. Just some was spooky, some was just fun, and I loved that.
That is awesome. Okay, so it kind of sounds like what you'd see going through like a blacklight mini golf course.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, we love that. I would say it did kind of relate to that because they had like that neon paint and that glow in the dark kind of stuff as you would go through.
Yep.
But you could go through as many times as you wanted, and it was sort of like an attraction. So later on, they had some alligators in the man-made pond below, and you could like look down and see the alligators or go down there and get your picture made.
Look, no trip to Florida is complete without getting your picture taken with an alligator.
Yes.
But it is always impressive, like, to my northern friends who think that, like, alligators eat everything they see. They just think you're the coolest.
Yeah, that's true. Another cool thing was they had this little section that had an arcade and stuff. That was the big thing in the 80s, was the arcades. But they also had an actual studio in this arcade. So a studio might not sound as amazing now with things like TikTok and all, but it was very cool back then because no one really had an opportunity to record themselves other than like on a tape at home. You press the two buttons, you sound so bad.
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about?
I
mean, you thought
that.
it was something because you're hearing yourself, and then you'd be like, do I sound like that really?
Yes.
But this place was sort of like recorded karaoke. So here's what you do. You'd pick your song like in the songbook list, and then you'd go into this booth with a mic and headphones, and they'd play the, karaoke style version of the song, and you'd sing it. So I got to do that one time.
Okay, wait. What song did you pick?
Okay. I was young. I picked Material Girl by Madonna.
Ooh.
I was like 8. I was a huge Madonna fan back then. And as I'm singing this, the music, I've never experienced this, so I think I'm, really something.
I love it.
But in all honesty, like if you played that back, if I had that right here with me, it's like this hormone shifting squeaky voice with all the echo in the background and everything. Anyway, I loved it back in the day.
Yeah, I can imagine how cool that would be. Yeah, I'd probably drop something from like Paula Abdul or maybe some backup vocals from New Kids on the Block. But I would totally belt out Material Girl with you. Like, who doesn't love Madonna?
I know. I kind of just want to ask you right now, can you just take over and do a couple of lines? And, I'm not that nervy, but anyway, that was the cool mountain mall that I remember. But here's a curious thing. It was not originally just like a mountain mall. It was a straight-up roadside attraction built in the 60s. So that's one of the things I didn't know until several years ago. And it looked very similar, but it was different. It really was a volcano then, and it was called Jungle Land. And the volcano actually would like have smoke coming out of it and look like it was erupting, and you would drive by and it's like boom, volcano. And then you might even hit the shoulder a bit because get this, so there was a woman standing at the very top.
What?
Yeah, so her name was Melody May, I have found out, and she would stand up there like in her full Tarzan Jane looking clothes, and it was to grab the attention of the people driving by. I don't know that you could even do that and like pull people's attention off the road now.
Right.
Probably a little dangerous.
Much busier roads.
Right? It's the 60s. So, and it's at the beach. I guess everybody's looking everywhere anyway. But so she would be standing up there and just, causing people to be like, oh, what in the world is this? So you'd pull over and you'd go through, and it was set up like a jungle area. And anyway, that's long gone now, and unfortunately the mall is long gone now too. So yeah, a lot of us were really sad to see that go, but it got pretty much in a really bad way. The last time we were in there before it closed, it was just like a horrendous smell. So I think they had a whole, underground septic issue because you couldn't eat your ice cream without smelling this mess. So
Oh no.
yeah, that kind of turned you off.
You know what? That is always really heartbreaking. Like, there are these places that define our childhood and our earlier years, that you just wish you could return to. And those things leave just this big hole in our hearts, once they're gone. And you spend forever, like, chasing that nostalgia that you really honestly can't get from anywhere else.
Yeah, you're right. And of course, as writers, hey, we get to just write that as much as we want to. We can
Absolutely.
pretend.
Yeah, that's
We do
right.
that for a living. But I will say the good thing is that some people now are really wanting to learn about these kind of things, and so they'll go check some that are still standing. They'll go check that out, or they'll look this up, or they'll get on board with like the posts and the groups that do love this kind of thing. So we were there in October for the motorcycle rally, and they still haven't built anything in this place, and I'm thinking it's right there in the heart of everything. I'm not really sure why they don't, bring something else up, but they did the same thing for Miracle Strip. They never put anything in the place.
Aw.
I know. So I'll tell you though, Goofy Golf, which was something done by Val Valentine, that's still standing next door, and it's super old.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very neat. It has all the structures.
Okay, well, listen, I have a roadside attraction of sorts that I can share. And this one is still in place. I actually don't see it going anywhere. And there are other similar attractions throughout the United States. But this is the only one of its kind in the state of Florida. So this is called Spook Hill. It is very close to the town I grew up in. So there is folklore and storytelling that precedes this area, sometimes referred to as Gravity Hill, which is something I've heard you mention before also.
Yep.
And it tells the story of a Native American tribe that was being haunted by a giant alligator. So the warrior chief went to battle this giant alligator and ended up dying in the fight. So he was buried on the north side of this hill. So sometime later, pioneers were hauling goods down that hill, and they noticed that their horses were kind of like winded and straining, even though they appeared to be going downhill. So people attribute this to an optical illusion, but many of the locals said that the chief and the alligator were just continuing their battle from the grave and causing confusion over which way the hill actually sloped. So if you are ever visiting like this little central Florida area, you can literally park your car on the line facing up a steep hill, put your car in neutral, and it will coast up that hill.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And when you heard me talk before about a place like this, it's actually a place near here. It's like 45 minutes to an hour from here. And same thing. So when I was a teenager, there were all these little urban legends and places we would go visit. And we had a place called Gravity Hill, and again, you'd park your car. There was a rise, and you'd put it in neutral. And they said, this being Georgia, they said it was, people from the Civil War, like pulling you up the hill. So I guess I wonder how many of these places there are, right?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, but I did experience it. It did happen. Did you get to experience the place you're talking about?
Oh, yeah. I was 30 minutes from there. So that was like the fun thing to do. Even our schools, our elementary schools, they take field trips.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I think this might have even been trespassing, so I don't have the same kind of story. But we didn't know it, of course.
Right.
So, that makes me think of like spooky things. There's places that are not just like the cutesy roadside attractions. There's the curious places, the spooky, eerie places, and I guess kind of a combination of both of those things was another place in Panama City, which was called Castle Dracula. And you're here at the beach. It's not like a thing for Halloween. It was literally a whole castle that looked like Dracula's castle.
Oh.
Yeah, it was crazy. I'll have to get into my mom's old pictures and find some, because everybody took pictures of this place back then. And it was facing the white sandy beaches. You're out there, and it's just such a contrast to kind of look over your shoulder and see this looming castle, right behind you. It had a hearse outside.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it had a hearse. It had actors, like people that would be, playing the part or whatever, out waving you down. It wasn't far past the big volcano place I was telling you about. But anyway, I remember my mom took me one time, and I was so excited because I was notorious, and still am a little bit, for being curious about something and then wishing I wouldn't have.
Right.
Wouldn't have had that experience, wouldn't have seen that thing, wouldn't have whatever, fill in the blank. But I was young, and we paid, went inside, And so this lady leads us to this section, and she kind of looked like a vampire or whatever. And she's basically like, okay, y'all are on your own. Walk down through here. And we're looking, and it's just a dark hallway with thick, like the fake fog. You know, the kind you can smell really strong. And so I'm like, nope.
Wait. So what was down there? Like, inquiring minds want to know.
Okay, well, it's much like everything else with the internet. It's all a mystery until these days. So at the time, I didn't want to wait around to find out, and I got out of there. But actually now, I've heard it was a wax museum. So
Oh, that would have been cool.
yeah, so that might have been neat. But now it certainly would have been. But probably nobody was going to jump out. But I didn't know. It creeped me out, and the idea of not seeing what's there. But I did love the outside of that place, and all these places that just would grab your attention, for a photo op, or for, of course, back then, it's on a film camera, and you have to wait for your pictures to come in.
Yes.
You remember those days?
Uh-huh.
We're have 5,000 pictures on our phone now. But anyway, there were some other things around there too, like the photo op kind of places I was talking about. So this was neat. One was called King Neptune, and I remember seeing that, and it was just huge. And it was a remake, another internet find, of something called Sirloin.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah, don't you love that name?
Yes.
Okay, so Sirloin was a restaurant, Sirloin Family Restaurant.
Oh.
And they had this huge statue that looked like a knight, and that was the cutesy little name. It's like a steakhouse kind of thing. And then, so it was turned later on to this Neptune guy. I think it was in 87. But this thing was like 3 or 4 stories high. Can you imagine for this one? I don't know. This was one statue. And the crown itself was 4 feet.
Oh, my gosh. Hope that crown doesn't fall off.
Right. So this sounds like something out of the old days in Las Vegas or something.
Right.
But, anyway, it was all concrete, and it's supposed to be the largest statue in Florida. So I didn't know if you had heard of it.
No.
Well, he was huge. I can vouch for that. But,
Right.
People started saying that's like the tacky Panama City. It was called the Redneck Riviera back in the day. But, I can tell you it's not near as cheap to stay at the Redneck Riviera as it used to be.
Right.
So I don't know what they call it now, but it was for sale like in '03 that I saw, which I was like, oh my gosh, but what would I do with a 3-story statue?
Put it in the backyard.
Put it in the backyard. No, the dogs totally wouldn't bark at that nonstop.
Nonstop.
But anyway, alas, they trashed it in '04. And they just tore the whole thing down. But I'm guessing people couldn't just pay for this and move it on out, right? I mean, they can't even do that with pianos. People just give that stuff away.
Right. Yeah. True.
There are a few things left in the Panama City area, like Gus the Bull at Angelo's Steak Pit, which is my favorite steak in the whole world. Are you a steak eater, or?
Yeah. I'll take a good steak if it's cooked right. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, any chance you get to visit this place, because it's still there and thriving. It is so good. I don't know what the secret is, but my dad took me there the first time. I was like 18 or 19, and he's like, you have to get the 32-ounce T-bone.
Oh my.
Yeah, so he did everything over the top, and anyway, I got it, and I was hooked.
Did you eat it all?
I didn't eat it all in one sitting, but I did take it back, and I ate the other half that same day, so
Yep.
I don't know if that counts.
Hey, it counts.
Anyway, that Angelo's steer that's called Gus, it's been sort of their mascot, and it's been there for years. Well, multiple ones through the years. It's a sort of a Panama City landmark. And I know that place has been around since '58. And anyway, everybody takes their picture with the bull. But, well, you know what? We should just go sometime. We should just go to everything we talk about.
We should absolutely go to the beach.
Always up for
Yes.
the beach and a steak. But, oh my gosh, I got to tell you this and share with our listeners something that my husband and I came across. So we were, this has been a year or so ago. We're headed to Panama City on our motorcycle, and we just look over at the side of the road, and he's like, smacking me on the leg, like, look, look, look. And so in the back of this abandoned, just little small place, sort of laid out to pasture, so to speak, are 2 of these bulls.
What?
Yeah, like the Gus bulls. And we know at first glance, because like I said, they're huge. They're like 20,000 pounds is what it says on their site, which is craziness. But I guess, they have to, exchange those through the years. I know one time a hurricane picked one up and flipped it over.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've got to share some pictures of these retired bulls, but it was sad and exciting at the same time.
Oh, it's where the bulls go to die.
Yeah, I think so. And for people to take their pictures with it.
Yeah.
Like me.
Yeah. Well, listen, speaking of incredible photo opportunities, and since we seem to be showcasing Florida for this episode, I want to talk to you about something called Coral Castle. Okay, so Coral Castle is in Homestead, Florida, which is, it's very close to Miami. But this attraction actually got its start in Florida City, which borders the Everglades. It is a structure that was created by, and I'm going to get this guy's name wrong, it's Edward Leedskalnin. We're going to call him Ed. Or Eddie, but he claims that he was healed of tuberculosis using magnets, which is,
wow,
that's interesting. So now it is said that Ed built this structure using reverse magnetism, which I was like hooked. But he spent 28 years building the castle, and he refused to allow anyone to watch him work. Like, he would sneak off in the dead of night, moving and sculpting these large, massive stones, and no one could figure out how he was doing it. Yeah. Now, there were some reports of some teenagers that snuck up on him one night, and they claimed that they saw him moving large stones through the air, and I quote, like balloons. So, I don't know. That's all hearsay. But in 36, Ed moved the castle one piece at a time across 10 miles to its location in Homestead, where you'll find it now. And this was more than just a quick photo op sitting on the side of the road. So for a small fee, you could tour this 2-story castle and see things like there was a functional sundial, a water well, a fountain. There's numerous pieces of really unique furniture, like a table shaped like Florida. There's chairs resembling crescent moons, a bathtub. There's even a throne, which I think is very fitting.
Oh my gosh.
But when Ed became ill, it was November of 1951, he actually put a sign on the door of the front gate to this castle, and the sign just said, "Going to the hospital." He took a bus to Jackson Memorial Hospital in Miami, and 28 days later, he actually died of a kidney infection at the age of 64.
Oh.
Yeah, it was that's heartbreaking,
Yeah.
He just thought he was going off to the hospital to get well. But Ed wasn't married. Ed had no children. And so when he died, the castle's ownership actually transferred to a nephew who was in Michigan at the time. And the nephew was not in great health. So he sold the castle to its current owners. And they are still giving tours today, which I think is really cool.
Oh my gosh. So I would really love to go there. And this time I won't chicken out for going into the castle.
That's right. We'll go together. Yeah,
Yes.
you can tour. The upstairs, he actually lived there. It's his living quarters, and you can go.
Oh my gosh.
I just think that's the neatest thing.
It is. I love it.
Well, listen, I have enjoyed this episode so much. It sounds like we have some road tripping to do.
Absolutely.
But we will get some photos put up for you guys to
Yeah.
see what we've been talking about. Remember, you can find those on our Facebook page, and I hope you'll join us again next time.
Well, listen, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, where we post exclusive content, contests, and so much more. And of course, you can keep up with our episodes through Podbean or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And as always, if you have a story that sparks curiosity or you have something that you want us to talk about, just shoot us an email to ourcuriouspodcast@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.